29th. This is the Board of Equalization meeting of Arlington County, Virginia. We have a full agenda for today. We have 6 cases, and basically everybody that is present knows the rules and regulations and the timings for all the cases. So we're going to go ahead and start with the first case with Mr. Warren. The RPC is 1402019 at 4301 Fairfax Drive. Good morning, Mr. Warren. You can start with your presentation, please.
Good morning, everybody. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes. Yeah, we can see you now.
Okay, I've been having some issues here lately with my my speakers, it seems like, or my mic. Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to start off by starting on page 25 of 94 of the county's BOE memo, which includes our summary of facts that was submitted with the appeal application. This property is located at 4301 North Fairfax Drive. Consists of one tax RPC. It's currently assessed at $45,290,900, $163 a square foot. The property was originally built in 1989. It has a total leasable space of 278,776 square feet, and it is an office building located in the Ballston submarket. I'll direct the board's attention to page 3, which is the county's office income and expense summary page, which shows 3 prior full reporting years of income and expense statements that was submitted along with the appeal application. I will point out that some of the income that was reported in for column C, which is for 2023, you can see that the total GPI listed increased from 7 million to 8.98 million. That's due to a miscellaneous income that was reported in that reporting year of 1,994,885. Now that was due to the vast majority of that, which is 1,967,554, was from a one-time lease termination or cancellation fee. And it should not be considered a typical operating income. It's not something that the client can expect to receive in a typical operating year, so we wouldn't include that on the I&E reporting. But you'll see, if you take that out, that in 2022, this property reported gross potential income of $7,038,500. You take out that $1.9 million for the cancellation fee the following year, it decreases to $7,016,026. And then most recently in 2024, the gross potential income reported for this property was $5.3 million. The county's current assessment estimates total gross potential income of $10,476,000. Now, this property does or has been suffering over recent years from excess vacancy, well above market. The property is currently 62.2% vacant, or 173,136 square feet of vacant space as of the 1/1/2025 valuation date. The county is using a 28% vacancy rate, but in their worksheet, we're initially estimating a total of 127,817 square feet of vacant space, or 46%. So again, the property has struggled with leasing and occupancy over the last several years, and the current both GPI and EGI that's being applied by the county is well in excess. And following our appeal application to the board, you actually see in the county's test column that their EGI went up from 7.6 million, which was already $2.4 million above what the subject property actually reported in effective gross income, to approximately 8.8 million in their test column. Now, same thing with when you look at the net operating income over the last 3 reporting years, the actual net operating income that was reported was 4.4 million in 2022. That increased slightly to 4.38 million in 2023. Again, that's taking out the $1.9 million in one-time cancellation fee or termination fee that's being reported in column C here, and then decreased again significantly in the most recent reporting year 2024 to $2,559,912. The county's test column is at $6 million, so roughly $3.4 million higher than the actual NOI this property reported. The 2025 assessment represents approximately 4% increase from the prior year's assessment. However, the NOI, in fact, oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong, looking at the wrong thing. But NOI again decreased significantly over the course. Now, again, with regard to looking at the county's test column, you'll see that those figures did go up across the board. And what the county is saying is, well, we took a look at the rent roll, and the few leases that are in place seem to be higher than the market rents that we were currently applying for them. Now, at face value, that would appear correct. However, it doesn't take into account any free rent concessions that are being signed, which are being signed for any new leases or expansions or, excuse me, renewals at the property. For instance, Lockheed actually signed which currently take up suites 330, 340, 500, 525, and 550 for a total of 35,997 square feet. The rent roll would appear to indicate that the face rent is $45 a square foot. Their renewal that was signed in March of 2025 brings the face rent down to $41 a square foot, in addition to 5 months free rent. So the net effective rent that they're paying is essentially $38 a square foot, which is more in line with the county's estimate for vacant space that they were applying in their initial assessment, which has now increased to $40 a square foot. So again, based on, and the last thing I'll end with is this property is being actively marketed for sale. They have a letter of intent out. It has not yet been signed, but for $28 million. And they're expecting that to be signed and delivered prior to the end of the year and closing prior to the end of the year. So again, the current assessment for this property is $45,290,900, and they currently have a letter of intent out that they expect to be signed prior to the end of the year for $28 million. And with that, I'll close my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Mr. Chicas, you can start with your presentation.
Yes, sir. Good morning, board members. Good morning, Blake. We rely heavily upon page 3, the office income and expense summary sheet. That was fairly well surmised by Mr. Warren, but at the same point, in looking at the sheet, it probably could have been surmised a bit quicker in the sense that columns D and H are nearly identical. Keep in mind that D was formulated some point October or November of 2024. It looks like H would have come together some point in March of April of this year. So given that they had the current rent roll, the 2024 information prior to the formulation of the pro forma, it essentially looks like they matched up with the January 1 assessment, almost dollar for dollar. The county is approximately $23,000 higher on the GPI, approximately $34,000 higher on EGI, a near dollar for dollar in OPEX, and $36,000 higher on NOI. So I believe that it looks like we're in the same realm of income stream belief as far as what we believe is possible and achievable at this property based on the information that is known. Biggest difference, of course, and you guys have heard it all year and you'll continue to hear it, is cap rate. The appellant is adding approximately 108 basis points to the cap rate, whereas the county is at 9.445, which again is loaded with the effective tax rate, the business improvement district, and the commercial rate. You know, I will point out, as Mr. Warren noted, upon receiving the rent roll and the 2024 information income stream, we did note we were low on virtually every category of metric. In other words, our office rate was low by almost $2.50 per square foot. Our vacant rate was low by approximately $5. If you look currently, CoStar's listing vacant space at $42. We're at 40. Retail rate was approximately half of what they're achieving, $56 a square foot. We were originally at 25. It does appear that in using the test and using the rent roll that's in place, the county's column G would actually come out to fruition, but again, without a third party for a increase recommendation. We do believe that column D should be confirmed. Again, I asked the board to look hard at columns D and H. You'll see that they're approximately the exact same number for NOI. $36,000 out of approximately $5 million is virtually nothing. Again, this is a cap rate issue. I'll remind the board, for those who don't know, this property is extremely well located across the street from Boston Metro, approximately a third of a mile from 66. You could be in DC in minutes. Well located. Again, but nice to know that the lease renewals were in place as of January 1, but as the board knows, we'll know about these lease renewals that were mentioned in the previous 8 minutes for January 1, 2026. Keep in mind that we do believe that based on the test, which again calls for an increase, we do recommend that the board confirm $45,290,900. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chicas. We'll go to questions. Do we have any questions from any board members? No one? Okay. I think we have pretty much everything clear from both sides. We'll go to wrap-ups. Mr. Chicas, if you want to start with your 1-minute wrap-up.
Nothing further, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Warren, you have a minute to bring us anything new?
Yes, just with regard to the cap rate, and I know that the board each and every year is likely inundated with cap rate arguments from tax agents like myself. But yes, you look at we are increasing the cap rate, and that's based off of what our discussions with investors, brokers in the area, the state of the market, publications that we've included, RERC's year-end 24 cap rate, PwC fourth quarter cap rate, Arlington County's Corpaz Realty Advisors cap rate study that they did for office properties. That study, which was completed to be used for the 2025 reassessment, indicated an average cap rate of 8.88%. There were 2 Arlington office sales that transacted in 2024, which were considered by the Corpaz study. Potomac Towers, which sold at a 7.32% cap rate, and Central Place Tower at 1201 Wilson, which sold at a 7.78 cap rate. As cited by the Corpaz report, both of those properties had rents and NOIs at market levels at occupancy at 80% or above at the time of the sale. Again, this property was 60% vacant. So okay. I think the cap rate increase was well justified. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Okay, now it's among the board members. Where do we stand? I'll start. I agree with Mr. Chicas. Pretty much the pro forma information and what the county has is almost identical, except with the extra $36,000 in NOI. But I think the below the line deductions that are based on a higher square footage, I think make up pretty much the difference in my opinion. So I'm okay with the current assessment the way it is. I think the test shows that it actually should have been a little bit higher than that. Mr. Mendez?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I was primarily comparing column D and column F, the reconstructed column. It seems like the owner didn't report the vacant office in their actuals. So I thought that was, that would bring it more closer where it should be. And the GPI is, almost is more than $400,000 higher in that case. So I would agree that maybe it's, slightly lower than it should be. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Mr. Hoffman?
Yeah, I would support a reduction. I think it's probably going to fall somewhere around what the appellant says when the sale comes through, around $100 a square foot. The property across the street sold for $102 a square foot. Pretty much same time period, concrete construction, underground parking, garage. The one that's sold has got a higher occupancy rate. So just hearing $100 a square foot or 28 million roughly doesn't surprise me that it might get under contract for that amount. I mean, we'll definitely review it next year when that happens. Only thing we've done in the past that maybe I could suggest now to get closer to the appellant's number is because we're over 50% vacant. That's kind of an extraordinary situation that maybe we add, 50 basis points to the cap rate and calculate that out at, around 42, 43 million.
I ran that test too, Greg, and I came out to 42,673,000, but it's only 53% vacant. So, we're just barely over the line. And we did that a lot more last year, but this year I don't think we've done it once. So I'm still okay with the current assessment.
Yeah, I'm not too persuaded with making changes based on, what if sales, pretty much. Letter of intents, are there, and I know how they work. I know how they may or may not happen, but they get canceled and changes happen. So I'm not putting a lot of weight on it.
Yeah, the counterpoint to that I have is that we have two actual sales within a half a mile. We have 4601, which we're gonna review that case, which sold for $100 a square foot at 25 million in late 2023, and we have 4350, which sold at $102 a square foot. These are both late 1980s concrete office buildings with about 50 to 60% occupancy, both in the exact same condition. Really no discernible differences between these the two sold properties and the subject. So I've got two data points that are actual sales that are around $100 a square foot. And then I've got an assessment that's, 65% higher than that. So that, to me, that's like, it's wrong. Right. So I'm going to vote against this. I would support a reduction because it is the wrong value. It's not a market value that we're confirming here.
Well, I understand, and I respect your way of pointing out that the comparable sales are, but we have to look at each property, based on, we're valuing this based on the income approach. And I think, different leases are going to make a difference on, whether the properties are identical or not, one next to the other. So that's why I'm not really focused a lot of times on what comparable sales are. Mr. Yates?
Jose, you're not, the amount of vacancy is what I had a bit of a problem with too, and that impacts the value going down the road. I did not run the test at a 50, counting the additional vacancy at a higher cap rate. But honestly, I think that makes a lot of sense. We've done it in the past. I don't see what's wrong with that. It's a 278,000 square foot building. That's a lot. You have a lot of vacancy there. There's a lot more, the amount of vacancy equals a lot of other buildings we look at. That's a lot to rent in an older building.
Yeah, and Mark, to your point, I don't think we've had 100 some thousand square feet of new leasing activity in the entire RB corridor, in the past 12 months. So to just say, hey, as long as you put $90 a square foot TI, it'll be up, it'll be stabilized. It's like it'll take 10 years at the pace that we have of leasing going on in Boston.
Well, that's the advantage, I guess, of having an assessment every year. But yeah, like I said, I'm okay with the current assessment the way it is.
Okay.
Anything else? No? Well, I'm going to make a motion that we confirm the assessment at $45,290,900.
I'll second.
We have a second by Mr. Mendez. All in favor? 2. Against? We have 2. So the motion did not pass, and the assessment is actually just being confirmed based on the default of the motion. So the current assessment will stay at $45,290,900. All right, we'll go to the second case, RPC 28004003 at 5550 Columbia Pike. Mr. Warren, you can start with your 8 minutes.
Okay. I will start again on page, which is our summary of facts, 34 of 190 of the county's board memo. This is the Wildwood Park Apartments. It's located at 5550 Columbia Pike in South Arlington. Consists of 1 tax RPC. The current assessment is $104,623,900. The county is recommending a revision to $99,294,900. The property was built in 1964, renovated in 2003, 400 total units, and is in the Columbia Forest submarket. It offers a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, and again, it's located in south, just south of Columbia Pike. Moving over to the county's mixed use income and expense summary. I know there's a lot of columns here, but we did supply, or there are 4 full calendar years of reporting. The columns that are highlighted in blue, columns A, B, C, and E. This is a stabilized property with regards to its operations, income, and expenses. Important to note that the assessment value for last year was $100,618,700. So this year's current assessment represents a 4% increase from the prior year. However, the total NOI that was reported in 2024 decreased by 5.6%. The counties did decrease their gross potential income that you can find in test column G3 from 11 million. I mean, they decreased it slightly by $100,000, 11 million to 10.9 million. However, the subject has never reported a gross potential income higher than what was reported most recently in 2024, which was $10,334,436. So again, substantially lower, almost $560,000 higher is what the county's test column is than what this property has ever reported. Same with effective gross income. The test column shown by the county in G3 is $242,000 higher than what was reported in 2024. The again, actual effective gross income that was reported in 2024 of $10,107,767 is the highest that's ever been reported at the subject property, and the test column is roughly $250,000 higher than that. Operating expenses, the county was applying 39% operating expenses. They did increase that to 41% in their test column. Now the year-end actual operating expenses reported were 46%, which is significantly higher. Now, if you look at the 3-year average, it is around 41%. However, as we've indicated in prior appeals, operating costs continue to go up. Vendor and contracting costs, supplies are continuing to increase, and we expect that trend to continue. Net operating income, the county's test column was revised to $6.06 million in their test column, which would be the highest that's ever been reported at the subject property, and almost $600,000 higher than the NOI that was reported in 2024. So this NOI is now $600,000 in their test column, higher than has ever been reported at the subject property. And again, we're talking about a stabilized property, stabilized income and expenses over the course of the last 4 years. So we're hoping that the board takes careful consideration into that. Other than that, I'll close and open to any questions that the board may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Mr. Chicas, you can start with your 8 minutes, please.
Yes, sir. So again, relying heavily upon page 3, the summary sheets. This is very similar to other properties we've heard before by this owner and this appellant. Each year, the claim is that, it's never achieved this amount before. But thank God for the historical summary sheets. You can actually see that every year it achieves new heights that hasn't been achieved before. Gross potential income increased by $340,000 in 2022 by 3.7%, almost $400,000 in 2023 by over 4%, and over $462,000 in 2024, almost 4.7%. Effective gross income followed as well, over $700,000 increase in 2022, over 8%, $360,000 increase in 2023, almost 4%, and another 4% in 2024, $380,000 increase. So yes, there is a very well-established projection that can be made that this property is going to continue. Again, as we can see, rents alone have grown 4% in 2022, over 4% in 2023, and over 5% in 2024. Nothing that would tell us this trend won't continue. It's well occupied, very well stabilized, over 97% occupied as of January 1st. We can see when we look at the history, the only thing changed that the county made was in column F, which was reconstruction, removing some $430,000 of replacement appliances and carpet. Not repair and maintenance of existing, but new. Obviously, this is not an expectation of almost $500,000 of appliances, new and new carpeting every year. So obviously that would be stabilized out as far as a projection forward. You can see in our revision, again, everything is very modest compared to what's been achieved historically. 5% growth for a effective gross income projection of just over 2.4%. 2.4%, that's less than what was achieved last year, 3.9, less than what was achieved in 23, and a fourth of what was achieved in 2022. Again, we've made projections that will increase the OpEx. Once again, you remove those CapEx items, another plus 2% growth for operating expenses. And again, a fairly modest 2.5% growth for net operating income. As the appellant stated, one can see when compared to last year's assessment, this is actually a decrease of 1.3%, which again is very much in line with the operating history as compared to the owner's projection of negative 18% growth. When looking at their pro forma, you can see that they're expecting negative 3% growth for effective gross and negative 5% growth of net operating income after years, 4 years in a row of growth. This being said, we do believe that the county should be confirmed at the revised value of $99,294,900. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chicas. Do we have any questions from board members?
No.
No, none? Okay. We're going to go to wrap-ups. Mr. Chicas, do you have anything else to add?
No, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Warren, you have a minute to wrap up?
Yes, just circling back again to the gross potential income, and we're at roughly $650,000, again higher than any income that's been reported. And we've talked about this in past cases. What the county appears to do is overestimate for stabilized properties their gross potential income, so that they can take their 6% vacancy rate that they apply to all apartments in the county. However, by doing that, again, you're overinflating the gross potential income that the property is capable of actually generating, and which is what we're showing in our analysis and the reporting of this stabilized property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, it's among the board members. Where do we stand on this one? Mr. Hoffman?
This is a very desirable property from an investment standpoint when you look at it, because of the gigantic surface parking lot in the front. Not only is that lower cost than structured parking, but you've got, future development potential, which is not even really needing to be factored in. I think Mr. Chikas has laid this out really well. You're under $250,000 a unit. That's probably 50% of replacement cost at the assessed value. I can't see any reason for a further reduction. This property is extremely stable. Throws off 5 to 6 million in cash flow every single year, and you've got all the land. I think it's over 10 acres. So I don't see anything wrong with this property.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I run a couple tests and even reducing the rental rates on the apartment side and, make an adjustment also on the expenses because I think they were not off a lot, but, just running all the numbers. And I come up pretty close to what the county comes with the revised assessment that they're proposing. So I'm okay with the proposed reduction. Mr. Yates?
I think the county did a good job. A couple minor items I looked at that maybe the county's a little off, but in general, I think it makes a lot of sense.
I agree.
I would agree as
Right.
well.
All right, do we have a motion from anyone or
Okay.
Mr. Hoffman?
I'll make the
I'll
motion to
second.
confirm the county's reduced assessment at $99,294,900.
It's the reduction, Mr. Hoffman, and we have a
Second.
second by Mr. Yates. All in favor? Everybody? Great, so the motion is passed to make a reduction to $99,294,900. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Warren. I think that's all for today for you.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you, Blake.
You too, thank you.
Thank you,
We're
Chris.
gonna go to the third case, RPC 16035-002, and that is at 1400 Key Boulevard, being presented by Mr. Harmon. Good morning, Mr. Harmon.
Good morning.
You can start with your minutes.
Yes, thank you. So this is the sister parcel to 1401 Wilson that we heard last Wednesday. This property, again, as you'll recall, did trade in December of last year for $9.4 million. Now you can see the details of this transaction beginning on page 33 of the appeal. The county does dismiss the sale price in December of 2024 on the basis of there being no recorded transfer in the land records. But as we discussed last week, that's because the property traded via an entity sale. So there is no change to the land records. Going into the sale, you'll see on page 34 of the appeal a sworn affidavit detailing the details of the sale by Tim Helmig. Tim is the managing partner of Monday Properties. Summarizing the affidavit there on page 34, essentially Goldman Sachs was the majority owner of the property and went to Monday Properties with what's called a right of first refusal to purchase the entire assemblage, meaning this parcel and the sister parcel we heard last week, at a total combined value of $29 million. This $29 million ROFO, right of first offer value, compares with the current 2025 assessment for both parcels, which comes in at $65 million. So with that ROFO at $29 million that Monday received from Goldman, Monday took that to the market. They said, is 29 million an appropriate value for this site? Is that what the market value is? So Monday engaged the services of eStill Secure. You can see the results of eStill's professional brokerage and marketing effort beginning on page 36 of the appeal. eStill did contact roughly 50 qualified bidders. The bidders' responses are listed on pages 36 and 37 of the appeal. Ultimately, only one of these 50 investors submitted a bid. That bid is shown on page 38 of the appeal. That single bid that was received for the site plan valued the property at about $20 million. With the results of the marketing effort by eStill Secure, Monday then countered Goldman's ROFO value of $29 million with that bid in hand at $20 million. Ultimately, those two parties ended up agreeing on a transaction value of $25 million for the entire assemblage, those two parcels, with this specific property being valued at $9.4 million. So this sale contract is included with the appeal. That's on page 40 of the county submission. The sale value of $25 million for the combined parcels is indicative of the fair market value of the subject property. as evidenced by other sales that have occurred recently in the market. You look at land sales in the county, you see the Ballston Macy's well below the county's assessed rates. The Clarendon Silver Diner site plan, the board saw the details of that went under contract in the end of last year, also well below the county's assessment for that property. You see 4420 Fairfax Boulevard, another property that sold a couple of year and a half ago, well below the assessment for that property as well. You look a block away at the Roslyn Gateway site plan, that property sold at the end of 2023, again, well below the county's current assessment for these properties. So that begs the question, why is sale after sale after sale coming in well below the assessed values? It's because of two reasons. First, the demand for office land has decreased significantly since the pandemic. We all know that the value of existing offices has decreased. This is a result of a decrease in demand for office space because everybody's working from home. Everybody has hybrid work policies. The demand simply is not there. That affects the value of existing office. It affects the value of office land as well, because after all, why are you going to build a ground up office building in a market that has 24, 25% vacancy with negative net absorption year after year after year? There's simply, you can't get it to pencil with lease up in any reasonable time period. We see this. There was a new construction at the corner of Quincy and Fairfax Boulevard in Ballston, the Skanska property. That building is a 200,000 square foot Class A office that was, it was still completely vacant as of the first of the year. That property completed construction, I believe, in the first or second quarter of 2024. And to give you some idea, historically, when new properties go up, they have pre-leasing. Not only do they have pre-leasing, but then they quickly lease up. That's where you hear the flight to quality. Well, that's not the case anymore. That's not what's happening with new ground-up construction. So the demand is much less. Add to that the cost of capital, the cost of financing ground-up construction of office properties has increased significantly over the past few years. Add to that, the cost of construction has increased significantly at the same time over the past few years. So there's simply no demand for this site plan that has 668,000 square feet of new office. The second reason sales are all below the assessments is because the assessed land rates have not been updated to reflect the market as of the date of value. Looking at the assessment for this property, we see the county employed a sales comparison approach to value. Inherent in a sales comparison approach to value is that comparable sales are used to analyze and develop a value for the subject property. So this is, everybody's familiar with this. If you've ever purchased a residential property, the appraisal you get to take to the lender looks at comparable residential sales and makes adjustments to come up with an appraised value. It's the same application in this case. A sales comparison approach needs to look at actual market sales that have occurred in order to develop a value. In this case, the property is valued as a site plan with the ability to build over 668,000 square feet of office and retail FAR. The county's assessed this FAR at $60 per square foot, again on a sales comparison approach to value. However, this county does not have any sales to derive that value from. We did request this information on multiple occasions. This is pursuant to Virginia Code Section 58.1-3331, which states the county has to provide these sale counts. They haven't provided them to date upon multiple requests. So where does this $60 per square foot value come from? We know it's not market sales. Market sales show that the value is vastly overstated. The sale of this property shows that it's vastly overstated. So essentially we're faced with a situation where the standard to judge it is a preponderance of the evidence. By law, we're forced to go with what is the preponderance of the evidence. Is it favor the assessment or does it favor the appellant's value? Well, on the assessment side, we don't have any evidence. We have a $60 per square foot value that's based on a sales comparison approach that isn't based on any sales. How do you do a sales comparison approach with no sales? We haven't seen a sale at $60 a foot for office land since Amazon completed their assemblage for their double helix property in Crystal City. I believe that was late 2019, early 2020. And that was a captive buyer who needed to complete that assemblage. So, that's kind of the question we're faced with is preponderance of the evidence. What does the evidence show? Well, recent sales all show that the assessments are overvaluing site plans. The sale of the subject property shows that the assessment's overvaluing this site plan. On the other side, we have the assessment that's not relying on sales. Preponderance of the evidence shows that the sale value from December of last year is supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harmon. Ms. Shuttlesworth, good morning. You can start with your minutes.
Yes, good morning, board. Good morning, Jordan. So this is the site plan 429. As the board is aware, it is composed of two separate parcels. The subject parcel is 1635-2. The other parcel, 1635-1, was presented to the board last Wednesday. This particular parcel is entitled to retail, 44,000, a little bit over 44,000 square foot of retail, and 274 residential units. Now, we were supposed to schedule these two cases together. However, last Wednesday, our agenda was already filled. We already had 6 cases scheduled. Therefore, we were unable to add this one. The board heard the appellant's arguments last week. And just a few seconds ago, both of these appeals are built around the sale information Mr. Harmon provided. According to his case write-up, the subject sold in December 2024 for $15,597,045. This sale, according to Mr. Harmon, was an arm's length sale, followed by broad exposure to the market. Our department was not able to verify the sale. There was no trace on sale in CoStar. There is no trace in the land records. The appellant submitted right of first offer notice, which was dated October 31, 2024. However, we were not able to verify if that sale was actually finalized. Did the buyer decide to terminate his acceptance of offer notice before the study period expired? We don't know. I emailed Mr. Harmon 5 short questions to verify the sale. I sent him email on July 2nd. Last Wednesday, Mr. Harmon stated that he was unable to respond as he was on vacation. While we're here several weeks later, we still haven't received answers to those simple questions. Now, the board did ask me last week if we were able to verify the sale, if they actually did close on the sale and we determined that it was an arm's length sale, would we change our assessment? And the answer is still no. However, we would consider this sale in our future land study. These sales are very rare, so the more sales data we collect, the more informed decisions we can make when we value these site plans. And this parcel, again, this site plan was valued the way we valued all other site plans in the county. We utilized 6 comps. They are attached to the case. And with all that, I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from board members? Mr. Hoffman?
Yeah, I guess for Annetta, it looks like page 62. I'm just trying to figure out the 1400 property. The building on that property right now it says finished area 175,222 square feet. Do you know if that's somewhat accurate? There's
I'm
an office
sorry,
building
Mr.
there right now, right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
62.
It's somewhere in the 175,000 square foot range.
I believe that's correct. Yes. Yes.
Okay. And Jordan,
Yeah,
are there any tenants in that building? Is it 100% vacant?
I believe this one's 100% vacant. So, and they're not allowed to condemn it per the county inspectors. Not condemn, but mothball. So they would like to mothball both of these buildings because they're completely vacant. Cut down on expenses, but they're not allowed to because the county inspector is not allowing them to do that for whatever reason.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? No?
I guess, well, I got one more because this is pretty complicated. Looking at the org structure and the purchase agreements and all that. Jordan, was the eventual purchaser some group that's essentially Goldman Sachs entity. Were they a lender on this building before? Were they an investor on the building prior to the ROFO? How did they come into possession of a right of first refusal?
So this was part of a much larger conglomerate partnership between different investors. It had dozens of different properties within the partnership agreement, is my understanding. Monday Properties had some involvement with this specific one as a very minority owner, and that's where the ROFO came from. Goldman Sachs was the, I believe, 95% partner, somewhere around there. They had the option to force a sale, to sell this at their discretion, at which point is what they executed on. And that's kind of what kicked it all off in Monday, marketing it to determine what the market's appetite for this type of site plan is.
Okay, but it looked like when Monday marketed it, the only offer that's in the package here was from a group called MCB.
Mm-hmm.
And Monday was going to be the general partner in the MCB Monday general partner, limited partner. Like there's some words around that. So
Mhm.
it's kind of, it wasn't even a third party offer. It was kind of a existing owner trying to save the property from foreclosure type situation.
So the offer was some sort of a coming into a new partnership with Monday for the property, and that's where that $20 million value.
Okay. It'd be like a recapitalization of the building.
It could be considered that potentially.
Okay. And so now, as far as you know, the ownership through an entity transfer or some sort of process, it's controlled by Goldman Sachs. Monday's no longer an owner in the property.
No, just the opposite. Goldman's no longer an entity.
Oh, gotcha.
Monday.
Okay, so they're out, and then the Monday MCB.
Oh,
No.
no, I don't think MCB. I think they only submitted the offer. I don't think that was accepted. They're not a part of the current ownership. Monday is the owner of record. They're the controlling interest. They brought on. I believe they did raise financing in order to purchase it. But my understanding is they own. I'm not sure of the current ownership, but Monday is the primary on that.
Wild. Okay. Cool.
Okay, thank you. Any other question, Mr. Yates?
Just curious, to the county, obviously the property didn't transfer because it was an entity sale, but is there any additional recordation of a new mortgage or any other financing on the property?
We were not able to find it. That is the problem. That is why I sent those 5 standard questions. They were simple standard questions we always ask to verify sale when we run into some kind of doubts. So it's very unfortunate we were not able to hear the answers. That would be very instrumental in our process.
Okay. And Jordan, you said that there was financing by Monday when they acquired the entity, but it's not recorded against this property?
I'm not aware that it's not recorded. I can't verify that, Mr. Yates. I imagine it would be recorded, so I can't verify the county's testimony to that effect.
Yeah, I understand the entity purchased the entity and so forth, and that doesn't change all the records, but okay. I was just curious about the financing. Because that's the other day, there was nothing said about additional financing.
They did not buy it outright with cash. They did have financing to purchase the ownership. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Any other question? No? Excuse me. All right, we'll go to wrap-ups. Ms. Shuttlesworth, do you have anything else to add?
No, just that we value the site plan. We apply the uniform land rates. The board heard the sister property last week, and I asked the board to confirm the assessment of $24,037,500. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harmon, you have a minute to wrap up.
Yes, thank you. So going to the county's 5 questions that is essential to their review of this case, we heard them testify last week. It would make no change to their analysis of this property. Now, they say that they need those questions in order for a land study. Where's the land study for this assessment? This $60 a foot for office and retail is based on no sales comps. Where's the land study? Is it to be determined? There's nothing. It's just pulled out of whole cloth. It used to be $65. Now they came down to 60, said, oh, it's gone down a little bit. That sounds appropriate. Sale after sale after sale shows that that is not appropriate. Now, these 5 questions, this is important because we get there was a follow-up last Friday to which we replied and did provide some answers and asked additional questions. You can see those questions on page 18, the first being the transfer date. This is included in the appeal. All 5 of these questions, as we discussed, are included in the appeal. Page 35, page 47, page 34, page 40. It's all included there. So I'm not sure the purpose of asking these questions other than to say, we can't do our analysis without the answer. This is all included, as we've discussed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now it's among the board. Where do we stand on this case? Mr. Hoffman?
I'm going to support the county. I mean, we confirmed this last year. I'm not sure what the vote was, but based on this not necessarily being priced up by site plan, but now you've got a fully vacant office building and the county's got it at about 137 a square foot on the existing building and garage, which I think the new owners are probably looking at that more than they are the site plan. And, we have a county adaptive reuse conversion program now that I think this would be very suitable for. So, if they're investing new capital in this property and taking it over, I would assume, since the office market being what it is, that they're looking at new programs, new redevelopment schemes. And so we're going to have to kind of look at this in a different way until all that fleshes out. So, but I think at 24 million, it's probably reasonable, just in looking at the existing office and garage and the value of that structure that's there right now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yates.
Greg, but what about I understand it's not recorded at this 15 million because of it was an entity purchase, not the property itself. I think that sale price has value or in the decision making. Are you discounting that out?
Yeah, it's not clean enough for me to really understand it. I've read through these documents a couple of times. Yeah. It's a very complicated structure for this board to kind of figure it out in 8 minutes and understand, was it really arm's length? When the underlying structure itself to me is probably in the neighborhood of 22 to 24 million dollars in value.
As is empty,
yeah.
Needing renovation and everything else.
Yeah, and to be honest, the preferable condition for an office building like that is vacant for an investor. Yeah. Because as we've seen now, you can get entitled in 6 to 7 months for a residential conversion, and go. So if you're in a good location, that's where you want to be, versus the first case we heard where, you've got leases through 2030, 2031, where you can't necessarily complete a conversion without terminating leases.
Even with the quantity of this much space.
It's only 175,000 square foot building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you think that, okay.
Mr. Mendes, you had something?
Yeah, in the past, we've kind of had a position that the site plan is a site plan, unless there's something crazy, some crazy outlier. I agree with Greg. I don't know if this is an arm's length transaction or not. There wasn't a ton of information. But it's interesting because the site plan, I believe, expires in 2 days. And I did ask last time, Mr. Harmon, if they're going to renew it or keep going. I can't imagine they're going to let it expire. So it's still going to be a site plan, and still is now as we're currently valuing it. So I'm okay with the county's assessment.
I agree. I think, we've done it in the past and we keep focusing, and once the site plan is in place, then, we're going to value that based on the site plan. And like last week we expressed, and like I said, I went and looked also on the land records. There is nothing recorded. There's no transfer of title, mortgages. This is pretty much, to me, a private agreement. If it's still in place, within parties to transfer equitable title. But once that sale is recorded, then I would probably consider more seriously to that. But I'm okay with the way that it was assessed at the current value.
The fact there's no mortgage does cause me to have a little more pause than I did last week on the other one. That there's just nothing recorded on that. And Jordan did say that they put financing on it. I can't imagine someone putting that much money in without any type of, I understand the entity transfer, that's fine. But I don't know.
It's a good deal.
Did
I mean, it was a
Goldman-
distressed sale.
Did Goldman finance
You don't
it?
see a situation where the seller is 1400 Junior Mezz Borrower LLC. It's not a distressed sale, right? This is not a free and clear institutionally owned property that was marketed for sale. I mean, it was heavily leveraged.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can cut through all the documentation and it's pretty clear there was distress on this property. They got a good deal.
All right, based on that, I'm going to go ahead and move that we confirm the assessment at $24,037,500.
I'll second.
We have a second by Mr. Hoffman, and all in favor?
Aye.
So it is 4-0. The assessment is being confirmed to $24,037,500. We'll go to the fourth case. Unless
Thank you.
somebody wants to take a break, let me know. We're going to go to the fourth case. It's RPC 14013-022, 4601 Fairfax Drive. Mr. Harmon, you can start with your 8 minutes.
Yes, thank you. So 4601 Fairfax Drive, this is one of the buildings in the office park that's just north of the I-66 and Fairfax Boulevard interchange in Ballston. This property sold for $25 million in August of 2023. At the time of the sale, and ever since, the county has disputed the sale price, arguing despite the facts of the sale that it was widely marketed, competitively bid, arm's length, which the board did accept. The county has taken the position that the value is actually much greater than that arm's length sale, currently assessing the property at $35.5 million. So the county's consistently dismissed this August 2023 sale price and argued that the fair market value is much higher than what the market has actually valued this property at. Knowing that the sale occurred 16 months prior to the date of value, I want to look at what's happened at both this property and in the market since the date of sale. So first, the county assessor's office has told us that the office market decreased on average by 8.5% from 2023 to 2024, then another 11% from 2024 to 2025. Applying these market declines that the assessor's office has told us have occurred in the market to that sale price of $25 million, we see that the property, based on the assessor's office own stated market dynamics, would have a value of approximately $20.4 million. So the assessor's office has told us the office market in the county has declined at least 19% since the time of the sale. What has happened at this property since the time of the sale? Well, the primary tenant at the building, GSA, has used up some more of their lease. It looks like they did recently re-sign, and they're extending their lease into 2026. So that's going to, delay any future plans. But GSA, that tenant's important to the analysis of the current assessment based on the income approach of an operating office building, because that tenant's paying a 34% premium compared to the rest of the tenants in the building. GSA is there on a pre-pandemic lease. They're paying $42.75 per square foot as of the date of value. You look at the rest of the building, what are the other tenants paying? They're paying $31.82 a foot. So we know the largest tenant is approaching the end of their lease. GSA has been constructing a new campus for this tenant to move into at St. Elizabeth's. That lease is paying a 34% premium on about a third of the properties in LA. So when this tenant vacates, NOI will see a large decrease at this property. Again, we're valuing an operating office building on the income approach. You've got the largest tenant known to be vacating shortly, and they're paying a premium to the market. Now, this compares again to other leases at the building, which average $31.82 a foot. This compares with a new tenant that was effective August of last year for 10,200 square feet. That's paying $27 a foot. This compares with the assessment that has come in at $36 a foot for both existing leases and new leases. The county's test then increased that beyond that. We know that those numbers are based on skewed data from GSA known to be vacating. So the property is about to be 28% more vacant than at the time of sale. It's about to see a tenant that's paying approximately $3.3 million per year replaced by a tenant paying only $275,000 per year, which results in a net loss of income of over $3 million. So pull this data all together. Since the time of sale, we know that according to the county assessor's office, the Arlington County office market has declined about 20%. We know from property data that income is about to decline about $3 million. Yet the result of this data is for the county to claim the value of the property has actually increased by 42% since the sale. This simply does not line up with what the data at the property or in the market has told us. The property has not increased by 42% since that August 2023 sale. We've additionally seen more sales come in at roughly the same value of this property when it's sold. Now, in reality, the assessment overstates the value of the property by overstating NLA at the property. The assessment makes inconsistent assumptions about the expiring GSA lease, and the assessment ignores the leases in place at the property. So first, the assessment overstates NLA by 8,555 square feet. This is an interesting mistake because the county had the correct NLA on the 2024 review for this appeal. So I'm not sure how year over year, 8,500 square feet of office space got added to the assessment, but the current assessment does overstate office space present at the property by 8,555 square feet. So next, the county does state in their write-up that they've given consideration to GSA's upcoming lease expiration. However, the county then includes the above market rent that is known to be expiring for GSA and includes that as if GSA is going to continue paying that into perpetuity. We know that's not the case. The counties acknowledge that. They acknowledge it in one portion of the assessment, but not in the other. They keep the rents high based on that GSA lease. Again, the assessment values both occupied and vacant office space at $36, but that's because of that GSA lease. All the other tenants are paying less than $32 per square foot on average. Now, that also comports with new August 2024 leases that were at $27 a foot. Again, the assessment assumes a 13% premium to existing office leases, excluding that GSA lease. That doesn't even consider concessions either. Market concessions, we've seen and provided leases to the county that show market concessions are averaging 1.5 to 2 months per lease year. So correcting this error in NLA alone gets the county's value down to $21.8 million, keeping everything else equal, changing nothing about the county's assessment other than correcting the NLA to correct for that 8,555 square feet that's been overstated. Now, the county did ask about they sent an email asking about a termination fee paid. We're all aware that termination fees are one-time payments that appraisal practice states should not be capitalized as continuing in the future. The county also requested leases from 2021, 2022, 2023. I'm not sure the purpose of this. No reason was given. They were just requesting 3, 4, 5-year-old leases. Those leases have all been included in the prior appeals. They're on the rent roll. We did not provide those leases because, as we've seen in the prior case, the county oftentimes doesn't even consider them when they're provided, or as we've seen in other cases, the county will misrepresent those when they are provided with them. We have an example of a prior hearing that we've had where the county used a 2026 rental rates based on leases we provided and ignored concessions that were included with those same leases. I actually just received a response from the county on another office appeal during this hearing where the same thing happened. We provided lease after lease, and the rates were actually disregarded. Concessions were disregarded. Their review came up with a higher rate after being provided evidence of the leases that show the rates should be lower. So there's a disconnect here. We're not getting an impartial review when we provide these. It seems to be, either you don't provide them and then they can cry foul at the board hearing, try to get some sympathy, or you do provide them and they disregard them and potentially misrepresent them, as we've seen. So as a final note, this property does have redevelopment in mind. As of the date of value, none of that was legally permissible. It is being valued as an operating office property. And we respectfully request the board reduce the assessment as set forth in the appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Harmon. We have Mr. Peralta for the county. Good morning, Mr. Peralta. You can start with your minutes.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. For this case, we know the 4601 Fairfax Drive. We've seen this case in prior hearings. This property did sell and transact in 2023 for $25 million. When looking at this property, it's important to understand the history of the property and where it is today. When you're looking at the prior years, you see that in 2021, you'll see it the resulting NOI there, and that property at that point in time was 16% vacant. As you see in more recent years, you see this project has increased in the vacancy till today. When looking at the current assessment, we did overstate the vacancy by 67,104 square feet. And that was including the GSA lease that we heard testimony this morning that they did renew this lease. And that was one of the questions that the county had asked the appellant. And this is very important information regarding how the county would view this subject property and how we would test going forward to see what the projected gross income would be for the project. In looking at the other questions that were asked, it's very important information regarding the leases. We did see that there were changes relative to certain tenants from last year to this year. We wanted to see exactly what those lease terms were. We wanted to see, why was there significant change in some of the rents from last year to this year. We saw rents as low as $2.84 in the current year's rent roll and $17.50. So those questions were concerning to the county to kind of better understand where this rent roll was, what this rent roll was showing, and what did it represent as far as the state of this project. So to not answer these questions was a huge detriment to how the county's review went and how we looked at this project. Overall, again, looking at the column D, the original assessment, after reviewing the information that the county did have and was able to extrapolate and kind of interpret based on the information that we had, the information that was in the original assessment was again understating the per square foot rates. We know that looking at the 2024 rent roll, that the office leases averaged $37.85, and we did see new leases in the project. We wanted to see those new leases, and because it gives us a snapshot of what this property can achieve as far as new rents and what those terms were, what the TIs were, everything that you would need to kind of value a property. And looking at prior rent rolls, I mean, there was a lot of work on my part going back and forth trying to decipher exactly, what was going on with the project. We know that the current owner is a developer in residential, so we wanted to see, if these new leases, if these new leases were set at a certain term, what the stipulations were, what the if the project in which this developer was pushing for the residential properties, if this project affects these terms at all, what is the I guess agreements with respect to termination, because that plays a huge role as far as we've seen, as I pointed out, that this project has been increasing in vacancy, moving towards that residential project. And as we heard in the previous case, that the project as 100% vacant could be more valuable. With this property moving towards that, I think that may be the case. And then another good piece of information that we heard in the appellant's opening is that GSA lease. It was extended. The original assessment actually captured that GSA tenancy leaving in the 165,349 square feet vacancy. And even in the test, the county accounts for it. So this whole, I guess, DNF is with the understanding, the assessment is with the understanding that this GSA tenant is leaving. But there was an extension. We don't know exactly the terms, but we do know based on the rent roll and the column E, when looking at the actual information that was submitted to the county, we do see that as of the date of valuation, only 98,245 square feet was vacant. So ultimately, if you look at exactly what was made for the property and you look at the NOI at above 5 million, that's that's an income that this property is achieving. And you see, based on the history, what this property can achieve. So therein lies the question with the county: how are we to look at this property? Are we looking at it at a redevelopment property? Are we looking at it as an income-producing property? And how does that affect our assessment? We know that as of the first of the year, this property was operating as an office property. We know that the history of the property, the NOI that has been generating over the years, and that's something that we can't ignore. So when valuing this property on an income approach, we do value it, with the same methodology as we have with other properties. The only changes that I would say when looking at this is, again, that GSA lease did play a huge factor on how we deducted below the line on the test and how we viewed this property as of the first of the year. Had we had that information, the NOI, the resulting NOI and the resulting value would have been higher. So again, supporting the original assessment. When looking at the actual NOI alone in column E, we're at 5.1. The original assessment it was at 4.6, and then even at the test was lower at 4.8. So based on that information, we do ask that the board confirm this case based on the information provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peralta. Do we have any questions from the board? No? Mr. Hoffman?
Yeah, I guess for Jordan, was the GSA lease was extended by 1 year?
Yeah, CoStar shows in June of 2025, GSA extended through October of 26, so 1 year, yes.
So they're just going until they finish up the construction project at St. Elizabeth.
That's correct. I saw an article saying St. Elizabeth was running behind, so that is, just temporary until they complete that.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Any other question? No? All right, we'll go to wrap-ups. Mr. Peralta, if you have anything else to add, you have a minute.
Sure, thank you. Again, even if the board were to take into factor the GSA lease, the test column, which has the most accurate information that the county was provided by the appellant. And it takes in account that 175 to 232 square feet vacancy total, including the GSA below the line. So even with that adjustment, it still confirms the original assessment, which was again overstated in the vacancy and lower on the per square foot rates. And with that, we ask that the board confirm the original assessment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harmon, you have a minute to wrap up?
Yes, thank you. So, the county seems to be hanging their hat on this GSA extension. Again, that was signed in June of 25. It goes through October of 26. The county has not stated any reason why this property should have increased in value by 42% since the sale. We hear, oh, if we had this lease, if we had that 2021 lease, they're trying to kick out tenants. We've never heard anything that says the value, therefore the values increased 42%. It hasn't. The assessor's office has told us the office market has decreased 20%. So on the one hand, you have the assessors saying the office market in the county has decreased 20% since the time of sale. On the other hand, they're saying, but this property has increased 42% despite no reason given. Ultimately, that's the question at hand for this property. Between the time of sale, a verified, widely marketed arm's length sale that, by the way, has been supported by additional sales in the interim time period from the date of sale to the date of value, additional properties have traded at similar values. What makes that a bad value? Nothing at the property's changed. The market's gotten worse. At most, this property should be assessed at that 2023 sale price of $25 million.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, it's among the board now. Where do we stand? Mr. Mendez?
Sure, yeah. When it comes to the GSA lease, they could extend again. We don't know. That's going to expire next year, so I didn't really take that into account too much. What I did take into account in this case was the vacancy. We're well over 50% here. I think in column D it's 63%. Column F, which is the test, is 72%. So I thought it was appropriate to bump the cap rate in this case. So that's what I did in column F, and I came out with 33,361,800.
Mr. Hoffman?
Interesting. Yeah, we had this case last year and we reduced it to the sale price. And I think there was plenty of evidence that it was not distressed, that it was arm length, that it was widely marketed, and that was the reason we did it. And it was within the kind of the assessment period for 2024. I don't really see how you could take that number then and say it's worth $10 million more because of a 1-year lease extension. So, my inclination is just to hold it steady for 1 more year. Keep it at 25, which was the sales price, I think, like end of August or September 1st of 2023 is when that closed. So less than 12 months prior to this year's assessment period. It's still relevant. It's still real. There's nothing that's material that's changed the value of the building. Other than, I guess, after the data valuation, I guess last weekend, the county board approved the site plan. So, next year that site plan is going to be probably driving the value of this building, at whatever the per unit county's assessed rate for residential units is going to be. But until then, I would just say we hold it 1 more year.
Mr. Yates?
Johnny, I'm glad to see your calculation. But I think it's going a little more than I think it should. But I'm more where Greg is at the 25 million.
Well, I guess I'm not really too inclined to go back and, because we did consider last year based on that, but the property was still producing. You look at the NOI for 2022, numbers were still there. These extensions that were still going on. And like a couple of appraisers in the county used to say years ago, we don't know what's going to happen. It could be released, it could be, so it's all speculation based on what may or may not happen. Right now, the income is there. And I pretty much like the way that the that Mr. Peralta did on the test. It's in, considering the higher vacancy. The only thing I did on that is increase the expenses a little bit, which reduced the assessment below the current assessment and of course below the retest. I increased it to 925, which brings it to about 22,245,000, which is a little bit higher than
What was that?
2,245,000. I'm sorry,
What was that amount?
2,245,465. It's a little bit higher than what the appellant has and what the county has, but I think that's kind of reflective of what the original assessment had and what the appellant has requested on the expenses. So that brings the final value to 35,275,100. I like the numbers better on the reconstruction, like I said, because it's considering the vacant space.
Well, I know the extension, and when it came into effect, and it is 1 year, they are going to leave. They're moving to the other property. It's going to happen. That's why I think that's probably that additional space is a bit of an issue more than we're allowing. It's going to redevelopment. It's going to be redone. I don't know.
Like I said, it's hard to predict. It's hard to tell. So right now,
Yeah. I mean, we don't have the votes to reduce it, Mark. So it is what it is. It'll get reassessed if it's the same rate next year for an apartment unit, it'll be 25,584,000. So we can go up 10 million this year, and then we can go back down 10 million next year, or we can kind of smooth it out and meet in the middle and maybe say, hey, look, there's some additional income now that's coming in from that extension, and maybe it's worth 26 million.
Yeah.
I would be more inclined to vote for something like that. I just don't feel comfortable going back to a sales price from 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, also, they've put money into it. They've spent some money to get the entitlement done. Probably there's some value there. Barnes has often said, it's $1 to $2 million to kind of take it through that process. So maybe we say it's the sales price plus $1 million.
All right.
I mean, I don't feel comfortable just throwing numbers based on, it's really based on what? Just on a thought that maybe this is what's worth, $1,000 more. I mean, $1 million more. It's coming out of nowhere. So I'm not really in favor of doing that. I would prefer numbers coming out from specific way of computing rather than just on a feeling and just, to appease someone. I think this is not our role. This is, we're supposed to look at each property based on the numbers, based on what's there, not necessarily on speculating.
I mean, I'm not speculating. This site plan was approved last weekend.
Right, but I mean, where's the $1 million coming from?
Well, years of experience and knowing what this owner probably put into the 4.1 site plan process, which was probably closer to 2 million. But I'm kind of handicapping it and say we'll give them credit for 50% of that the market's not going to give them 100% of the credit if they went and put this property on sale right now. I mean, the reality is, if they wanted to sell this as an entitled land site, it's probably not going to get up to anywhere near $100,000 a unit, which is what the assessment is for. It's probably going to be closer to 75, 80. And these are real comps. Like you can go ask any broker that's out there selling land for redevelopment. Stick frame construction, RB corridor, 75, 80,000 a unit is today's value. So, I mean, I'm not making up any of these numbers. I'm trying to keep the county out of a severe overassessment case that they will have to fight if we continue to overassess these properties.
Yeah, I mean, this property was assessed, it used to be like in the 60 million range, and then it went down to the 40 million range. And last year we went down because of that sales price, but to me, it's not reflective of
it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's not reflective of what's producing. So I'm not really, I'm not convinced in that.
Okay. All right.
Would you do the higher end? You said 1 to 2 million. Would you do the 2 million? We'll call it 27.
Yeah. 27 million.
it's just not going to keep producing this.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna reassess it next year based on the site plan. So it's just 1 year. What do you think, Johnny?
I'd go with 27. I think that sounds good. I just didn't
Mark?
like the 2023.
I can do 27 then.
All right.
All right, I think you probably have the votes to do that, Mr. Hoffman.
I'll make a motion to reduce for this year the assessment to 27 million.
All right, we have a motion to reduce to 27 million. We have a second by Mr. Mendez. All in favor? All against? I'm against it. So it's 3-1. The motion is passed to reduce the assessment to $27 million. All right, thank you, everybody. And we'll go to the fifth case, Mr. Harmon, RPC 17002-005 at 1701 4 Mile Drive. You can start with your 8 minutes.
Yes, thank you. So this is a 280,000 square foot office building in Roslyn. Now at the top, I do want to correct the record as to an error stated on the county's review. The county's review states that potential gross income based on the rent roll is 13.65 million. However, if you do turn to the actual rent roll provided, this is on page 31 of the appeal, you'll see that this figure stated by the county is vastly overstated based on the actual rent roll. It represents about a 10% increase in rental income year over year. Yet this is, obviously not the case. All these leases don't have 10% escalations between 24 and 25. You can see that on that rent roll. Now, this is an interesting case because we hear from the county that they requested further information to hugely important information for their analysis. But in this case, that did not trigger any questions. They just accepted that income's going to go up by 10%, which was based on an error on their part. That's not what the data shows, and it didn't even prompt a question. So just to correct the record, that 13.6 million gross potential income that the county states is not supported by any of the documents. You can see that on page 31 of the appeal. Now, looking at the assessment as compared to the operating history of this property, we can see that the property has been at stabilized occupancy for at least the past 4 years. If you'd be so kind as to direct your attention to the taxpayer appeal, which begins on page 21 of the county's submission, you'll see the 4-year operating history of the property, including a stabilized vacancy rate of 8%. On page 21, you'll see that NOI at the property, when that uniform vacancy collection is considered, NOI is $8.9 million, and 2024 NOI stabilized for that market vacancy is $8.45 million. So the assessment is just above the 4-year average stabilized NOI of this property. So with this, I do want to focus on the cap rate for the assessment as imputed for this property. On page 21, you can see that the county's base cap rate, and again, base cap rate means the cap rate that's comparable to what you'll find in market surveys, industry publications, when you have discussions with brokers and investors, they're all referencing base cap rates. That base cap rate is exclusive of the tax rate and the bid rate. For this property, the county's chosen a base cap rate of just under 9.6%. From that, the county loads it with the bid rate and the tax rate, and that's the number they present to you on their pages. Now, we've not heard from the county how this cap rate was derived. We did have a discussion, a call with 3 of the representatives of the county to try to learn how they got to these cap rates and this 9.6% cap rate. No articulable reason, rationale, or process was given during the discussion. We were told there would be a written response to follow. It's been a couple of months now. The county has followed up, and they keep saying this is to come. We'll provide it. We'll provide it. To date, nothing's been provided. Now, we've heard the county testify before the board that we didn't rely on one sale. We didn't rely on just Corpax. We relied on all these different studies. So I'm going to share my screen at this point to show the studies that the counties testified they relied on to derive the cap rates. So here you can see in order the Corpax, PwC, RERC, CoStar, CBRE. These are all the sources that the county stated they relied on to develop their cap rates. Again, we don't have any indication of how they got from A to B. How did you get from all of these cap rates to the final cap rates? You can see here, this is the average of all the sources cited by DREA as having been relied on. And the difference between what they actually came up with. So on the low end of all those sources, the county is 1.15% below the low end. They're 1.34% below the high end. On average, the county's cap rate is 120 basis points below what all of their sources say the cap rate should be. We've never been provided with a reason of how do you get from all of these sources saying here's low, here's high, here's average. Here's the difference. How did you determine from all the market data that the cap rate should actually be well below what the market says? So turning back to the subject property, we again see the assessment's assumed NOI is right at the stabilized 4-year average, yet it imputes a cap rate that's 120 basis points below the county's cited sources. Now, why does this matter? I mean, this matters because if we look at sales that occurred in the county in 2024, we see an even larger discrepancy between the county's cap rate for this property and what the market tells us investors use. Now, as I stated, this property stabilized occupancy. So what comps have sold in the past year? Well, 1201 Wilson, this property sold in January of last year. The board did hear that case. That property was 98% occupied at the time of sale. It's about the same occupancy as this property. 1201 Wilson was built in 2017. That puts 1201 Wilson in the county's newest age tier. Now, what we can do with that is the buyer on that was CoStar. CoStar reports the sale cap rate is 8.12%. That's the base cap rate. Knowing that this is a much newer property, the subject property is 1979, the sale count 1201 Wilson is 2017. We just applied the county's own age tier adjustment to this sale cap rate, and that's how we got the appeal cap rate at 10.62%. So that's supported, we looked at the main comparable from last year, that 1201 Wilson, and that's how we got to our claimed cap rate. Now, when you look at the other sales that occurred in 2024, you see first 4075 Wilson Boulevard sold September of last year. If you apply the county's own county's NOI that they've assessed that property at, you see the sale price represents a cap rate of 17.78%. Next, 1616 Fort Myers sold January of last year. Again, applied Drea's own stabilized NOI. That property sold at a 23% cap rate. Next, 3865 Wilson. It's on the next page. Again, using Drea's stabilized NOI that they assessed that property at. You see the sale cap rate was 13.7%. The property we just heard sold August of 2023 at a cap rate, again, using Drea's own stabilized NOI for that property of over 20%. So these properties did have higher vacancy. Of course, that doesn't factor into the county's methodology. They don't use it on their analysis, but these sales clearly state that vacancy does have an impact on cap rates. So we have 5 market sales in the county, all within the recent past. All of these sales show that the county's cap rate for this property is not supported by the actual market data. So we have market sales. I'll finish off with this page again. This is the Corpax study. The county's rates are below the Corpax study. County's rates are below the PwC study, below RERC, below CoStar, below CBRE. The standard of proof is a preponderance of the evidence. We don't have any evidence showing support for the county's cap rate for this property. There's no market sales. There's no investor surveys. The county's own professional study of Corpax doesn't even support the cap rates. Our value is based on a sale comp, one of the best sale comps that occurred last year. We made the effective age adjustment based on the county's own analysis of effective age tiers to get there. And our claim value is well within all of these ranges for a 1979 building. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peralta, you can start with your 8 minutes.
Yes, thank you. 1701 North Fort Myers. You see this project is 100% occupied, and it's been at stabilized occupancy over the last few years. We know and understand that when looking at the history, the project has been producing over what the original assessment has been, over what the original assessment states as that net operating income. And that's due to our 8% vacancy that we allot for those projects, even when it's 100% occupied. In looking at the most recent I&E We know that the original assessment, again, is understated as far as the projection that we had, as far as, the per square foot rates. I believe we're spot on as far as what we projected for 2024 or 2025. What I don't understand is how the appellant has projected almost 2 million less than what this project has ever produced as far as net operating income. And with the most recent column E projection or submission, they're exactly about 2,014,000 less than what this project has achieved. Let alone and looking at the prior year's history, it's even more than that. So this project didn't require a test on the county's part. We didn't feel that there's anything more to add as far as what the original assessment has shown. We did show that even with, I guess if you look at the overall NOI of the column E at over 9 million, the appellant is again showing a decrease of almost 2 million going forward, and whereas this tenant has I believe has a lease quite a long lease going forward. Let me see if I could pull that up. Until 2034. So I mean, this tenant isn't going anywhere as far as projecting what the outcome or the income for this property would be. The county has support for this original assessment. So I believe that's all I have. Again, 100% leased. It's even with it 100% lease, the county, based on our cap rate changes. I mean, in the last 20 years I've been with the county, there hasn't been huge changes with respect to the cap rates. And understanding that the new climate of office and what that entails, we did make huge changes across the board. And we know that there are limited sales, so we went outside just the Corpac study. We have listed all the available information that we had at our disposal. We do see that there's a huge disparity between the office properties operating as office versus the redevelopment plays that we're now seeing. And so when looking at some of the sales that were transacted in 2024, we do see that the two main sales that did transact and were, to our understanding, going to be operated as office in the future, transacted at $614 per square feet and $591 per square feet. This property, I believe, we are valuing close to $300 per square feet, and this is a 100% occupied property. As Mr. Harmon mentioned, that CoStar was at about 98% occupied. I think that is all I have. Also, with limited amount of information we did make changes to sort of how we stratified or looked at the effective ages. We did we did make two changes as far at the top end and low end to kind of accommodate that flight to quality notion, where we did add another I guess separation for the newer properties, and then we lumped the older properties. We added a category to what we felt was the older properties in the county, and in doing so, we had almost about I think 195 to almost 200 basis point change in some of the properties based on our changes. So we do stand by our changes in our cap rates based on the information we had. We did make significant changes looking at this cap rate adjustment for this property alone, again, it represented a 16.26% decrease on a 100% occupied property. So with that, we're open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peralta. Do we have any questions from the board? No. Mr. Hoffman?
Yeah, Jordan, what would you say would be the best comp in the county for 100% leased government facility? Is there anything else like it?
Yeah, of course. There's several 100% government leased properties in the county.
Like the DARPA building, I'm thinking.
DARPA's much newer. This is a 1979, but DARPA, Boyd Watterson at Sequoia Plaza.
Sequoia, yeah.
You have Naval Research right there on Randolph, right down from DARPA. There's several, but those are all much newer, I believe, 2000s and beyond.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Okay, we'll go to wrap-ups. Mr. Peralta, you have a minute if you want to add something.
I don't have too much more to add. Again, the county didn't have a need to test because the original assessment was well below what the most recent information received and in the prior years, and it's 100% occupied. And even with that, again, we stress that it went down 16.26%. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harmon, you have a minute to wrap up.
Yes, thank you. So we did hear the county testify repeatedly. The property is 100% occupied for the foreseeable future. Yet the assessment assumes operating expenses will decrease by 17% in 2025. If the property is 100% occupied, has been 100% occupied, will continue to be 100% occupied, how are operating expenses going to decrease by $500,000 for 2025? We look at the operating history of this property, expenses have increased year after year after year. We see this on most properties in the county. This is in line with expectations of, rising cost of labor and material inflation. This property last year had $3,051,000 in expenses. The assessment's at $2,500,000. How does the county justify a stabilized property, in their own words, stabilized for the foreseeable future, yet expenses are going to decrease 17% somehow magically in 2025? It's simply not feasible. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's among the board now. Mr. Yates?
That was the first thing when I just initially glanced at this, that the expenses, I agree with Mr. Harmon from that aspect, but I can see where the county on this 100% lease building to the government put in the 8%, which more than offsets expense increase. I understand we use 8% all the time, but I cannot see increasing the expenses $1.50 or something. I think this number's good.
I agree. Even if you take the actual operating year 2024, and I calculated the expenses at $2,900,000, you still come up with a value of about 89 million. So
yeah, I did that too.
It's pretty low. So I'm okay with the current assessment the way it is. Mr. Hoffman?
Yeah, and I think that the cap rate is probably too high anyway, given that it's 100% leased with 9 years of term left on it, government-backed lease. So I think if anything, it's probably underassessed.
Yeah, I think so.
Agree.
All right. We have a motion. I'll go ahead and move that we confirm the assessment at $83,908,900.
I'll second.
We have a second by Mr. Yates. All in favor? So it is 4-0. The motion is confirmed that the assessment is at $83,908,900. All right, we'll go to the last case, RPC 17001-010 at 1100 Wilson Boulevard. Mr. Harmon, you can start with your 8 minutes.
Yes, thank you. So this is 1100 Wilson Boulevard. It's in Roslyn. It's one of the Twin Towers. This is a 531,000 square foot office building. The issues on appeal are the treatment of concessions, the operating expenses, and the cap rate. Now, if you'd be so kind as to direct your attention to page 49 of the appeal, you'll see the taxpayer's 4-year operating history. You'll see the current assessment. You'll see the taxpayer's pro forma, as well as the grounds for appeal. So starting at the top of page 49, for office lease space, the assessment imputes leased office rents at $53 per square foot. This number, as the county has written in their statement, compares with actual in-place rents at $56 per square foot. Now, what's the disconnect? Why is the assessment using 53 instead of 56? We can only assume that this discount is to account for concessions. This is what DREA's guidelines for tax year 2025 state, that concessions will be considered on a property by property basis. However, if we look at actual concessions at this property, we see that the assessment's assumption of a $3 per square foot discount is not adequate to cover either what the property has documented as concessions over the past 4 years, nor what the property expects to be incurred going forward. The assessment's consideration of the concessions, that $3 per square foot delta between list rents and actual rents, assessment rents, amounts to 1.18 million. If you multiply that out, do the $3 times the occupied office, they're essentially stating they're giving 1.18 million in concessions. This compares with the 4-year average concessions at the property that have been at $2.1 million. That, of course, is nearly $1 million higher than what the assessment has assumed. So we know that the assessment, by the guidelines, the county's guidelines, they are stating that they'll consider concessions. Looking at the 4-year history of the property, the county's consideration of concessions is nowhere near adequate. Again, 4 years average, they've averaged 2.1 million. The current assessment at $53 a foot amounts to a $1.18 million acknowledgement of concessions. Okay, but that's the past. How does going forward look at this property? Well, going forward, concessions are even higher. Based on new leases in place, the property anticipates and is contractually obligated to pay out another 6.1 million in concessions from January 1, 2025 onward. So even greater than the 4-year average. So we have the actual history of the property averaging 2.1 million per year in concessions, which, by the way, that is skewed low based on 2021 and 2022. If you look at page 49, the actual operating history, you'll see 2023 and 2024 concessions were higher than 21 and 22. Going forward, we know they're even higher, 6.1 million outstanding. And then we have the assessment assuming just 1.2 million in concessions. So clearly there's a disconnect. We're told concessions will be considered. When we look at this property, we look backwards, we can tell they're not considered. We look forwards, we can tell concessions are not considered. So, what did the county do on their test? They further exacerbated this problem. They assumed even lower concessions on the test, concessions of just under $400,000. So we look backwards, we know that the initial assessment vastly understated concessions. We look forwards, we know the initial assessment vastly understated concessions. The county's review says we're going to vastly understate them even further. Now, why is this important other than, the county guidelines state that they consider it? It doesn't seem like they have in this case, but is it important beyond just what the guidelines say? Well, the answer is yes. And we know that assessments have to be made in accordance with generally accepted appraisal practice. So what I'm sharing now is a portion of the board book that we did provide with the appeal, and I understand the board members have had a chance to review. So this is page 67 of the board book that we provided. This is put on by the Appraisal Institute, called the Appraisal of Real Estate, latest edition 15. This excerpt deals with effective rent. You can see in the highlighted portion, it states in markets where concessions take the form of free rent, above market tenant improvements, or atypical allowances, the effective rent must be quantified. Effective rent is an analytical tool used to compare leases with different provisions and develop an estimate of market rent. So it goes on to further state effective rent may be defined as a total base rent or minimum rent stipulated in a lease over the specified lease term minus rent concessions. And then it goes on in this later portion to give you 3 different methods of calculating. None of these have been applied by the current assessment. The county reviewed the appeal knowing that concessions was an issue, both based on historical and going forward, and the county's review resulted in even fewer concessions. The textbook literally states you have to consider concessions. So historically, the county has elected to consider concessions by amortizing concessions over the life of the lease to arrive at the net effective rental rate. Again, this has not been done in this case. Going back to the textbook, there is an example provided here at the end. Essentially, they reduce the in-place lease rate by the concessions. You can see here the contract rent is $480 per square foot. The effective rent is only $440 per square foot once you factor in concessions. That's what we've done in our appeal. That's what the assessment and the test have failed to do. Now, ignoring actual concessions to be incurred, this is, we're all familiar with Kohl's, the department store. When I was reviewing this case and thinking about concessions, this is the same thing as saying that Kohl's, which discounts almost every item that's for sale under their roof. You never pay full price at Kohl's. You go there, you get a discount. You also get Kohl's cash at checkout. Ignoring concessions on an office property assessment, that's akin to Kohl's booking their sales at MSRP and not the actual sale price. Of course, we know that is not the actual income received. Of course, Kohl's books income at actual sale prices and not MSRP, because MSRP is not reflective of what the actual effective income is. That's the same is true of rents in an office building. The rental rate on the books must, per the appraisal textbook, consider concessions. Next, the assessment understates operating expenses at this property. In 2024, the operating expenses were $5.925 million. The assessment assumes OpEx at this property will decrease by over 6% in 2025. The county's test does increase OpEx to just above the 2024 level. However, this is also in conjunction with the larger error on the county's test of further ignoring concessions. We've assumed, based on years of data showing inflation leads to higher expenses year over year, as is documented at this property over the past 4 years, as shown on page 49 of the county's presentation, we've assumed another increase that is known to be occurring based on the history of this property, based on the history of other properties in the market. You can see this property's operating history, OpEx has increased year over year over year. Finally, the assessment assumes a cap rate that is well below what any source of market data shows. We've gone through this, no market sales in the region, no investor surveys. The county cites a sale that was an off-market private transaction that wasn't marketed. It was between interested parties. It was a tenant purchasing from an owner who didn't solicit any other bids. They're still below those cap rates. There's no data that supports this cap rate. Again, the standard is a preponderance of the evidence. All of the evidence supports the county's cap rates being too low. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harmon. Mr. Peralta, you can start with your 8 minutes on this case.
Yes, thank you. When looking at 1100 Wilson Boulevard, this property is situated in Roslyn. Now I've toured this property and seen the rooftop views sweeping views of DC. So in this property, at one point, we did view it as a trophy building for the county. We since didn't assess that 50 extra basis points in later cases, but at one point we did have that adjustment made for this property as well as the sister property. When looking at this property, you'll see that the income history in years past has demonstrated an income far beyond what the original assessment for 2025 has shown. In large part, it's because of our methodology and how we looked at this property and applied the 28% vacancy across the board for all properties that have similar vacancies in this building. Looking at the original assessment and comparing the vacancy square footage used, we did find that we overstated again the vacant square feet when comparing to the most recent rent roll, which showed about 85,243 square feet vacant, whereas in the original assessment we were much higher at 119,000. Upon retesting, we did see that there was a larger number there at 123,000. We made that adjustment in the test. With respect to the original assessment, as far as the per square foot rates are concerned, we're going off the other rates that were used at the time. I believe it was a 2023 rent rolls used, and we know and understand how the lease agreements operate, and oftentimes you see a 2.5%, 3% increase year over year based on the rent terms and increases in any lease agreement. So when looking at this particular 2024 rent roll, we did find that office leases average $56 a square feet, and the retail is at $75.30. In our test and in original assessment, those figures that we've used are supported based on that rent roll alone. Turning to, I'd just like to point out how that translates, those rates used in our test and our original assessment, how those rates are affected by our application of the vacancy for this property. So when you turn to page 4, I've added a column, if you will, and it simply just calculates the rent minus the vacancy that's applied for this building, which is 28%. So when you're looking at effective rent, as Mr. Jordan had pointed out, you'll see the effect that our 28% vacancy adjustment when applied to the original $55 for office space, how that affects the rate, our effective rent, if you will, or our rent that is minus the vacancy adjustment. You're looking at a property in Raleigh with the sweeping views of Washington, D.C. At one point was a trophy building. We were at $55 for face value for the rent. And in the effect of the 28% vacancy adjustment, as we saw in the previous case where 100% building, we were still reducing rents by 8%. Here we're reducing the rents by 28%. So our net effective rent is, or our net rent is $39.60 when we apply that vacancy across the board. And then in the vacant space, we're at $30.42. When you look back at the appellant's base rents, they're at $50.41 as a base rent. And when they apply the 28% methodology that the county uses, they're at $36.29 for a building of that stature, of that nature, in that location. So, it goes to show how the county does consider rents, that are, have the concessions and so forth. So with that, even with that, you look at the original assessment and the test, we still fall. I mean, our net resulting operating income, we're still less, almost 500,000 less than what the most recent year reporting is. In our, when you compare columns D to E, line item 19, we're still 578,000 less than what they reported, and that's because their current vacancy at the property was, I believe, 16% at 83,651. Upon learning, I guess, the new information, we did find that again the increase in vacancy for the 2025 assessment should be closer to 123,225. So column F does depict a more accurate account of the rent roll. And even that, at increasing the rates for the office, for the retail, and increasing the OpEx on the property far beyond what has ever been reported. We're at 1125 in the test. We still have a value, a resulting value that's even more than an original assessment. So, I mean, with that, we do ask that the board confirm the original assessment, which is, again, 500,000 or so less than what the most recent I&E is shown, and has been reported in column E. So with that, the county is open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from board members? Mr. Hoffman?
Yeah, this was part of a portfolio sale, I think, in 2024. Is that correct, Jordan?
Yeah, it was a deed in lieu, I believe, some sort of a distress sale. The owner wasn't able to make it work, so.
Okay. And then I think maybe Rob put this in here with the package, but there's a CoStar report that says there was a most recent appraisal dated 1/1/2024. I don't know how accurate that stuff is from CoStar. Is there an appraisal in anybody's possession from January 1st, 24? It's on page 16 or 17. 17. Sorry, appraisal date 1/11/2024. Most recent appraisal $201 million. I don't, this is all CoStar data, so I just didn't know if anybody had that appraisal or had access to it.
Not aware of it. I haven't looked, haven't been presented with it if it does exist.
Okay.
Okay, any other question? No? All right, we'll go to wrap-ups. If Mr. Peralta, if you have anything else to add?
No, yes, actually, again, with this property being understated as far as income is concerned, we did make a change from last year to this year. Primarily, I believe, due to the cap rate, and that resulted in a 13% decrease, 2.7 million change in value, and we asked that the board confirm the original assessment based on the history of this property and comparing the original assessment to what the resulting NOI has produced. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harmon, you have a minute to wrap up?
Yes, thank you. So there's a lot of emphasis put on the change year over year by the county rep. We went down from last year on overall value. We went up on cap rate. That presumes that 2024 assessments were accurate. We know from the data, 2024 overassessed every market sale in the county. You can see this in the board book. The county, on average, their 2025 assessments are 43% higher than those 2024 sales. The 2024 assessments, I believe, were 92%, almost double of what those sales came in. So using 2024 as a base and referencing change year over year is not an accurate measure. 2024 assessments have been proven by market data to be invalid. Now, it sounds like the county's testimony, they're clawing back uniform vacancy and collection by ignoring concessions at this property. That's not in accordance with generally accepted appraisal practice. Finally, the Corpax report, you can see the sales listed. The county's cap rate on this one is below every single sale that Corpax has utilized. This is page 77 of the Corpax report. Once you exclude the private off-market sale, it's below every sale. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's among the board now. Where do we stand on this one? Well, I'll start. I mean, I don't really have any issue with the current assessment the way it is. It's a big reduction from last year. And I think it's, honestly, like the previous case, I think it's under assessed. So I'm okay with it.
I agree.
Mr. Yates? I'm sorry, Mr. Owen.
I was just going to say, I think it you don't get much better as far as the views and the location, and you see a tower like this at $340 a square foot. It just seems like it's not overassessed.
All right. Mr. Yates?
Yeah, I played around with the vacancy issue and looking at what the appellant or changing the reconstruction a little bit. I looked at doing the expenses a little, 65 basis points on the assessment and things, but I kind of agree with you guys that at the end of the day, it brought it down a couple $1 million, but I don't see why that would be the case. At the end, it's a good building. I'm fine with it.
Okay. Mr. Mendez, you okay with it too?
Nothing different.
Okay. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and move that we confirm the assessment at 178,228,500. Do we have a second? Mr. Hoffman? All in favor? All right. Okay, so it is 4-0. And the assessment is being confirmed at 178,228,500. So that concludes our agenda for today. And before we go off the meeting, I wanted to go back to case number 4, Mr. Hoffman, and the one that you made the motion to reduce at 4601 Fairfax Drive. And believe me, I appreciate your input and all your experience, but I need to have a rationale for the minutes that need to be written, if you don't mind.
Case for 25 million sales price plus additional value added.
Plus additional
With-
value. Okay.
For the approval.
For approvals. That's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much.
All
So if anybody else has anything extra?
Thank
No?
you all.
All right. So we're
Thanks.
concluding the meeting. It's been adjourned. And the time now is 11:06, and we'll see everybody tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.